Before you call yourself inconsistent, check whether your life has a place to land. I'm Emily and I help people craft life systems using standards, proof, and self-observation. Because sometimes the problem is not that you cannot stick to anything. Sometimes the problem is that too many categories in your life are floating around without any real container. And that distinction is important because inconsistent is a word people like to use against themselves all the time. They'll say things like, I'm so inconsistent, I never stick to anything, I stop everything I start. But sometimes what looks like inconsistency is actually overload with no place to go. And I would call that category collision. Category collision is when every part of your life starts blending together. For example, the home, the appointments, the food, the errands, the bills, the projects, the routine, the emotional labor, the people, the reminders, the planning, the things that slipped yesterday, the things that matter for next week, the things you want to become, and the things you already feel behind on today. That is not just one task. That is a whole life trying to sit on one mental shelf. And when there's no clear container for all of those categories, everything starts competing. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels unfinished. Everything interrupts everything else and everything leaks into the next thing. So now you're not just trying to be consistent with one habit, you're trying to be consistent with a flood. And that's different because consistency becomes much harder when everything is not separated clearly in order to be held well. There's no place for tasks, for thoughts, for routines, for proof. No place for the categories to sit without colliding, so of course you feel scattered. But scattered does not always mean unserious. Interrupted does not always mean incapable. And starting over does not always mean you lack discipline. Sometimes it means your life has no container. A container gives a place, a shape, and boundaries for what you're trying to hold. That can be a notebook section, a daily proof log, a weekly reset, a standards page, a home for tasks. A place where reminders live, a place where progress is actually visible. Because one reason many people feel nothing sticks is because their efforts have nowhere stable to land. They try to build a routine, but the day is too blended. They try to plan, but all the categories are mixed together. They try to reset, but everything feels equally loud. They try to track progress, but there's no visible place for proof to accumulate. And that creates a discouraging loop. Because now you keep blaming yourself for not being more consistent, when what you actually need is better structure around the life you're actually trying to hold. Not more guilt, not more pressure, not another lecture about discipline, a better container. So here's the practical shift. Before you ask yourself, why can't I be more consistent? Ask this instead. What category is actually overloaded? Is this a time issue, a home issue, a habit issue, a mental load issue, a planning issue, a patterns issue, a standard issue? Because once you name the category, the blur starts to come apart. And when the blur comes apart, life becomes easier to work with. Now you can say, this belongs here, this needs attention first. This is not a personality flaw, this is a container problem. This is not me being incapable, this is me needing a better place to put what I'm carrying. And this is where I come to the word holdable. Can your life be held in a way that actually makes follow through more likely? Can it be seen? Can it be sorted? Can it be carried without being turned into one giant fog of obligation? That is a much better question than, why can't I just become more disciplined? Because many people do not need harsher self-talk. They need a better container. And that is part of what Craft Cottage Inc. is quietly building around. Containers, patterns, proof, standards, ways of seeing, ways of separating life enough that it can actually be worked with. Because a person who looks inconsistent may not be inconsistent at all. They may be trying to keep too many parts of life afloat with no real structure underneath them. And once that changes, their consistency may begin to look different. Not because they suddenly became a different person, but rather because they finally have a way to hold all that they've been carrying.